We should be live. Hey everyone, welcome to the SEGA Saturn. Hold on. I fixed it. So a bit. Go put towards my face. There we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the SEGA Saturn SHIRO stream. As usual, we're going through Magic Knight Rayearth and trying to beat this game. With me today are my beautiful guests, Claire, and of course the famous SEGA LORD X. How you guys doing tonight?
Hey Pat, I'm doing well. How about you?
I don't know how to answer that. I'm very tired and wanna, get done with some stuff, but besides that, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing, Mel?
Doing great.
Nice. I'm glad you're here with us today. Yeah, did you, how's everything going with you, Mel? You getting everything set up for your live video stuff? Or your new content?
Have actually been doing the final edits on the video that I'm going to drop tonight. And I actually am probably going to drop another video way sooner than I expected. So I should have 2 videos up here in the next day or so.
Oh, nice. That's going to be awesome. I'm really excited. 2 videos at once?
Yeah.
Wow, you're just spoiling our little community with all your videos.
Yeah, we'll see how they take to this new style that I'm trying, man. The old style, I would cover so many games in one video. I think a lot of people liked that, and I'm kind of slowing it down a bit with the new channel. So, those.
This is the hole. Oh no, it's not a hole. Wow, how did I make that? All right, get it back. I think it's just walking. Yeah, it's just walking. Nice. So, did you want to talk a little bit about your new style that you're approaching?
Well, basically, when I did the channel the last time, I was covering, say, 8 to 15 games an episode. And that ended up being a problem because not only did it take a long time to make that content, I mean, my videos averaged 15 to 30 minutes. And, doing an edited piece of content that runs 15 or 30 minutes, man, you're spending 2-3 days worth of work to get something like that up. And I mean, that was just wearing me down, man. It was very stressful. So I wanted to make the videos a little smaller, a little more focused too, because when you cover that many games, you often only spend maybe a minute and a half talking about the actual game. So, I would do like a really quick, hey, this is what I think about this game for 90 seconds. And I really wasn't going into any detail, anything special about the game. It was just an opinion piece. And, I wanted to focus more on the game, talk a little more about its pluses and minuses, and just make the videos more focused. So I'm trying to get the videos down to maybe 5 games an episode and see how that goes.
Nice. Yeah, I'm very looking forward to that. Personally, I really prefer that when it goes more in depth about like more games and just a bunch of games thrown in. That way we can get more of a opinion piece and more of an idea of how the game is and just your general thoughts on it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, it was also, I have so many personal stories with a lot of these games, man, because I imported the Saturn when it first came out in Japan, so I actually had to go through quite a bit of hardship, and, I have some stories with a lot of this software, and because of the way I did the content the first time around, I never really shared those stories, and I thought that was a mistake.
Nice. Did you want to, speaking of that, did you want to go into sort of how you started off on the Saturn? I know we might have went into it on the podcast, but I think I really like to hear that again, just like your experience with the Saturn and importing it.
When I imported the Saturn at the very beginning, I knew the date it was coming out because it was pretty heavily covered in a lot of the more sophisticated gaming magazines like Next Generation, or if you're over in the UK, you may remember Edge. I mean, they were basically the same magazines. And I knew when it was coming out. I was working towards saving my money to get it. And the day that it came out, I ordered it. I ordered it next day. I got it. And pretty much from there, for quite literally almost a year, every game of note that was playable to an English-speaking player, I got it when it came out.
Oh, wow.
So for that first year, man, I went crazy buying Saturn games. I mean, I put all my focus into it, and I have so many stories about buying really bad games for a lot of money, you know, and experiencing games, you know. I still, man, one of my greatest memories of those early days of the Saturn was importing Panzer Dragoon. And the day that it came out, and I mean, just experiencing that, because that game blew my mind. I had never played anything remotely like Panzer Dragoon. And I was playing it months before even the US got it with that surprise launch. And I mean, that endeared me to that system even more than I already was. And, you know, there's little stories like that, man. Every game has a little story to it for me. So, you know, some of it endeared me to the Saturn. Some of it, man, I paid tons of money for terrible games. But yeah, I mean, those stories, man, really defined my whole experience with that system.
Did you have any game where, what do you think, actually, what is your worst and sort of the best game that you got doing that method? Like, what was your biggest surprise and biggest disappointment?
Without a doubt, the biggest disappointment was Daedalus. I've spoken about it a few times. It was called Robotica in the West. And I had seen pictures of it in the game magazines, and, you know, it was a first-person shooter on the Saturn. And I'm sitting here thinking, hey, first-person shooter on next-generation hardware, this is going to be a kick-ass game. And I imported it. I paid next-day shipping for it. I ended up paying literally $120 to get this game.
Wow.
And of course, anybody that's played Daedalus or Robotica knows it is a lifeless, boring first-person shooter that is, it's not the worst game ever made, but it is by far, you know, one of the games that you wouldn't want to pay $120 for in the library, you know?
Dang, I know a lot of people complain about paying a lot for games, but damn, $120? That's a lot of money.
I don't realize, like, everybody thinks back to like 2003 when Saturn games were cheap on eBay, and they correlate that with the early days as, hey, you should have bought Sega Saturn games, you know, way back in the day. Well, you know, yeah, there was a lull there for a few years when Saturn games were kind of cheap, but in the very beginning when you were importing games, they were far from cheap. I mean, they weren't quite as bad as they are today with a lot of games, but you still had to pay. The average import in the first few years of owning that system, just to get the game in America, you were looking at $60 to $80 to get the game, and then another $10 to $20 to have it shipped to you.
Wow. Jeez. Wow. I never realized how expensive some of that stuff was, especially back in the day. I always thought, you know, it'd be cheaper, but I mean, when you're paying like $60 for a $20 game in Japan, it's like a dumb, you know, just a unplayable game or something, or some like hentai game. I mean, it's really eye-opening, I guess.
And you know, a lot of times, man, you'd walk into a blind purchase and not realize what you were getting. You know, you would walk headlong into a game that had a ton of Japanese text and was literally unplayable.
Wow.
I ran into that a few times where it was just like, oh man, you know, I can't play this game. You know, you're talking, you know, 1995, 1996, man, there are no walkthroughs on the internet at this point. Buy these games and you'd be stuck with them. You couldn't play them.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you were telling me that, I remember last time you were telling me about how you had an old Japanese woman help you out playing Magic Knight Rayearth sometimes you got lost.
Oh yeah, man, when I first played Magic Knight Rayearth, the game you're playing right here, I played through the Japanese version because the Japanese version came out so many years before the US version. Would get stuck so often because I couldn't understand the story, and I had to literally get someone that spoke Japanese to kind of watch the game with me for 10, 20 minutes in the area that I was in and hopefully get me an idea of where I was supposed to go.
Did you ever? Yeah. I mean, I guess what was your worst experience doing that stuff like that?
I think probably the worst experience that I had early on. Magic Knight Rayearth wasn't the worst one because Magic Knight Rayearth is kind of action. Kind of like an action RPG. There's a lot of, running around and exploring and stuff. So that one wasn't too bad. But, I ran into stuff like Albert Odyssey that I could not play it. I tried my best, but I would just get stuck so often. And the battles were random. So I'm looking around trying to find my way out. And I'm just random battle, random battle, random battle. And games like that, they were really a pain in the ass to play.
Wow, that would really just piss me off. I don't even know how you'd be able to stand that. It's like after the 100th random battle, I'd be like, okay, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just getting these random battles. I'm just tired of this.
Yeah, and pretty much that's exactly what happened, man. Once you put in hours worth of that and you realized it wasn't going to get better, this was going to be the way this game was going to play. That was pretty much it. It was just like, I give up. There's no way I want to play this. And I'd have to wait and hopefully get an English version later on. And luckily for, did get those English versions, but for some of them we didn't. You've got stuff like, Grandia and Langris or, games like that. We never got English versions of those games on the Saturn.
Jeez. So I guess you'd play them and it's like, okay, I'll just wait for the English version, and then you wait and wait and wait, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, it's not coming out. I can imagine how frustrating that must be.
It was actually, really irritating because, in those early days, 94, 95, even into a little ways of 96, you were still thinking that the Saturn was going to have a chance. The Saturn was going to sell enough, do well enough to where we would get these, a lot of them, by the time 97 rolled around, we got nothing.
Wow.
So, what was the game that you were most disappointed to see not have an English translation? Was there a game that you had played in Japanese that you were really looking forward to seeing a localization for that never came?
Yeah, it was the one I just said, Grandia, however you wish to pronounce it. That was sort of the Saturn's, I don't want to say it was an answer to Final Fantasy VII, but it was Saturn's great epic before he latched onto Panzer Dragoon Saga. That big RPG that proved that owning a Saturn was worth it. Was, the Saturn was capable of that was exclusive, and it was exclusive at the time. And it was just that big game, that it game, and it never came out in the West, man, on the Saturn. And that was a blow because, you were so looking forward to that. You were like, oh my God, I can't wait for this to come out. And then it didn't. And then to rub salt in the wound, the PlayStation, winded up getting it. And that was like just a smack in the face because you were a Saturn supporter. You were there, supporting Sega, supporting its third parties, and then you didn't get an important game like that. It was painful back in those days.
I can imagine. I mean, in those days where it's like RPGs are just like a risk at that point. I mean, there wasn't really anything that really came out. It's like, oh yeah, RPGs, let's put it on there, right?
It was kind of like in those early days, when the Saturn first came out, and even when it came out here, in the US, build up where RPGs were getting respect, but they still weren't mainstream. I think Sega was very scared to put a lot of time and resources into RPGs, it really wasn't until Sony and Square put that huge, marketing campaign behind Final Fantasy VII and just got everybody so stoked for that to come out that RPGs really opened up to the West. And then once that happened, of course, everything changed. RPGs started coming out left and right. But unfortunately, by the time 97, 98 rolled around, man, the Saturn was done. It was over. Nothing was coming out for it.
Jeez, I'm sorry to hear. Yeah, that would really frustrate me back in if I was like, my age back then looking for these games, because it's like there's no good solution to them. I mean, there was no possible way anyone could fan translate these at this point, and it's probably not even physically possible to do that, as the SDK stuff was really hard to get back then, probably, right?
Oh yeah, we wouldn't see fan translations for quite a while. There was just this dead zone. A lot of people don't realize either that the Saturn was dead a lot quicker than most people realize here in the US and in Europe, because we had that first year where Sega was really getting software out for it. That was 95. And really weren't that great. But Sega doubled down. They tried to make the Saturn work good in 96. Games, everything was still okay. But by the time 97 rolls around, you see a stark contrast. Party support in the West. You see a stark contrast in what Sega is doing in the West. And then by the time early 98 rolls around, the system's completely dead. The Saturn was dead before Panzer Dragoon Saga ever released. People don't realize there was months in between when games would come out. Nothing came out before Panzer Dragoon Saga in 1998 really of substance, not of regular releases, man. There were months in between releases. And you knew in 97, you knew late 97 that the Saturn was done. That system was dead. Even in Japan, you started to see this swing where the PlayStation just started taking over all third-party notice. And even there, you knew the system was in trouble, man. So, like I said, by the time 97 rolls around, these Japanese games are never coming to the Saturn in the West.
That must have been extremely disheartening to just sit there with this console you spent, hundreds and hundreds of dollars on, even thousands probably, right? Would you say that you'd spent probably thousands on this system at that point?
Oh, easily, man. I spent 700 plus just getting the system on launch day. So you got to figure, man, that's 700 plus just for the system. And then I'm averaging $60 to $80 per game to get them. And I'm buying dozens and dozens of games. So yeah, I had easily put thousands of dollars into the system.
That must have sucked, especially knowing what happened. Do you ever like sit down, look at what you had and be like, you know what, I probably should have just got a PlayStation. Or I should have went with Sony.
That is an often not talked about history through there, because I actually still bought a PlayStation the day it came out in the US. I supported the PlayStation the entire way through, right from the beginning, man. So, I'm not one of those Sega guys, man, that hates Sony or hates Nintendo. I was right there, man. I bought an N64, a Japanese version the day it launched because I was so excited for Super Mario 64. I still supported these other systems, so I always, had something to play. It was like I was never without. It's just the Saturn was the passion. The Saturn was what I wanted to see succeed.
Yeah, man. I was sort of in the same boat where I didn't have any hatred towards any system. The only system I could afford at the time was one, and that system was N64. So really, I never really got into heavy Sega. The first systems I've had was Sega. So I had the first system I had was the Sega Pico. I got the Game Gear, and then I got the N64. But in that era, the 32-bit era, the only system I really had, the 64 32-bit was the N64. So I mean, I always go over to friends' houses and I'd play like PlayStation or maybe something different, like a Genesis. But I really just couldn't afford it. So I mean, knowing what I know now, I definitely would have potentially went with the Saturn or the PlayStation, as it's sort of what I'm into now. But you know, it all goes back to just evolving taste over the times. You know.
Yeah, definitely, Platt. I was a PlayStation kid growing up, and I'm kind of glad that I was, looking back, because I feel like being there for that era of JRPG popularization and having access to Grandia and all the things that Square put out, it really shaped my taste in gaming, and I don't know if I'd like the games that I do now if it wasn't for me owning a PlayStation back then. So, as much as I love the Saturn, it's my favorite console now as an adult, but I'm kind of glad that I was a Sony kid.
Yeah, and I know that's really hard to like say, and not it's coming out, but it's like, I mean, you just gotta think of the times. I mean, if we were back then, I mean, I guarantee all three of us, knowing what we know now, would go with PlayStation, or at least maybe dabble with the rest of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what about you, Mel? If you could do it all over again, and knowing what you know now, would you still do the same thing you did, and went with Sega?
Do it all over again. I would definitely buy the Saturn at launch. I love the machine. I still ended up loving the games that I got. I was almost a pure Japanese Saturn gamer when it came to what I bought, what I paid for. Things where I experienced so much unique gaming on the Saturn, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Of course, I would probably not pay $120 for Daedalus. But, you know, I mean, just the experience that I had with the Saturn, it made me the gamer that I am today. That entire experience, you know, Panzer Dragoon 2, you know, Sega's arcade ports, man. You know, I could still remember the excitement of Virtua Fighter 2 and, you know, Sega Rally coming out and just being so, you know, enthralled with those games and playing the hell out of them, man. And while I did love my PlayStation, you know, I did like a lot of games on it, I never got that feeling from the PlayStation like Sega knew how to make a certain game that attracted a game player like me, and that experience, man, there was just nothing like it.
Hey, and I respect that a lot, man. I know that had I gone back, I mean, I would maybe get a Saturn, but most of my investments would be PlayStation, as I think I would enjoy most of the games that came out on that system, at least back then. But that's knowing what I know now. I mean, but you know, even then, I definitely would get a Saturn as well and play, you know, all these RPGs and all these really fun games for it, and maybe import it when it was a little bit cheaper. Because I think while the U.S. library might have not been the greatest, I think it was a good investment for the Japanese one, at least, especially for those shoot 'em ups, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about when systems, I actually understand completely why people went with the PlayStation 1, you know. It was the more commercially successful system, so, you know, games were easier to find that were to people's taste. And there were so many more games, man. You know, it's true that in Japan, you know, the Japanese Saturn saw 1,000 games released for it, which is way more than was released in the West.
Wow.
Those games aren't accessible to English-speaking people, man. They're nearly unplayable. A lot of them are.
And that's always a sadness.
Actually a pain in the butt, too, man, because if you've ever seen a complete Saturn Japanese library, there are so many cool-looking games, but you know you can't play, you know, almost 3/4 of them.
Yeah, definitely. I think my biggest lament out of all of that is still Sakura Wars. The fact that we never saw a localization for Sakura Taisen 1 or 2. Every time I see that game, my heart hurts a little bit because, we still don't have a fan translation for the Saturn. We never got an official localization over here, and I just want to play it on my Saturn so badly, but I know that it's not going to be very enjoyable if I'm not able to read.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a great title to play on the Saturn. And I really, like you, hope one day somebody will be like, okay, let's do fan translation now. But, I mean, it's not that likely as it's not... I mean, even in the US, it's not really that popular of a game. I mean, they released, the Sakura Wars for the PS2 and Wii, but, I mean, I think it didn't really do what the developers thought it would do in the US, at least.
No, and I think it would have been hard to expect it to, since we didn't have the first few games in the series. We didn't have access to them ever here. So to kind of throw players into things on the Wii and the PS2, it's a lot different than the players in Japan who had followed the series from the start.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same way. Have you guys ever heard of a series called Langrisser?
I think, yeah. Oh, is that in the same family as the Growlancer games?
No, it's...
That's a dumb question. I just thought because it sounded related.
Have you ever heard of a Genesis game called Warsong?
No. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I may be going back too far for you guys. Yeah, but Langrisser was games that the Saturn actually saw every game up to that point released for it. It was a really popular game series in Japan, and we never got them. And that was really painful, man, because it was another series that had a great pedigree to it that Japanese gamers loved, and it was a good series, but we never got it out over here.
What exactly is the game about?
Game, I mean, it has really no direct comparison over here except for the Genesis Warsong game, but yeah,
I gotcha.
For those types of games to not have made it.
Yeah, it's always a bummer. I mean, it makes me hope one day that we'll have like Star Trek-esque universal translators where we can just turn it on and play whatever we want and be able to understand it 100%. Like we speak that language.
I mean, heck, the game you're playing here, US gamers are lucky they even got that. I mean, I don't know if you know the history behind Magic Knight Rayearth, man, but it took Working Designs years to actually finish this game and get it out. I'm shocked it actually came out.
Yeah, I'm also shocked because I know the history behind the game is that it had a lot of coding issues with it, it lost code that they needed to redo. And that's one of the reasons why it took so long compared to its original release in '96.
Yeah, it came out really early in the system's life in Japan, and when Working Designs was taking forever to get the game out, I thought for sure, this game's vaporware. There's no way in hell it's coming out, but they're at the end, and luckily it was, sort of Saturn's swan song.
One hell of a swan song, at least.
Definitely. I mean, if I was back in that time, I probably would have given up hope. I mean, seeing games like Grandia come and go without an English localization, and then here at the end, years after the original Japanese release, to see Magic Knight Rayearth come out in English, that must have been an awesome day. Exactly,
and I mean, it just goes to show the dedication and love that Working Designs put into these games. I mean, they wanted to. I mean, you say a lot of businesses do it for the money, but I think they're one of the businesses where it's like, okay, I just want to play this game. It's really ridiculous. It's literally like a fan, like like you and me releasing Saturn games essentially is what it was, which I think is really, really great and something that's really hasn't been. I guess maybe it's a little bit more prevalent today with like limited run games, and I mean even his new company that he's doing that Working Designs has. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's kind of
Gaijin Works?
Yeah, Gaijin Works. It's like, I mean, it's kind of funny though because they actually had a swan song for the PSP in the US, which was the last physical game being the Summon Night 5, I think. I think it was 5 or 6 that came out in the U.S. So it's kind of funny how these things repeat, you know.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Working Designs was actually pivotal to the Western Saturn for any RPG gamer. I mean, I want you to think, just consider for a second, if Working Designs had not supported the Saturn. Saturn's RPG library would look like in the US. It would be pathetic, man.
Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Yeah, it would be awful.
I could have sworn wasn't there another RPG you got, or did like get like nothing but Panzer Dragoon Saga? I mean, I can't really name an RPG that came out for it that wasn't sort of anime-esque based or something that Sega just, you know, released.
Shining Force games.
Yeah, that's really ridiculous. Wait, did they do the Shining? It's kind of ridiculous how they had to do the Shining Wisdom game. I mean, even Sega developed both this and Shining Wisdom, so it's like they're picking up their slack, right?
What happened, man? Basically, Sega was saying, hey, we're not releasing these games in the West, and that's where Working Designs came in, and Working Designs saved the RPG genre on the Saturn, because we wouldn't have seen most of these games without them. I mean, can you imagine a Saturn without Dragon Force or Magic Knight Rayearth or, you know, I mean, just, it's unbelievable to fathom that the system could have existed without these games.
It's a Saturn world that I don't want to live in, because that sounds dreadful.
I completely agree. I'm primarily here for the RPGs, as few of them as there are, but yeah, I would definitely be a sad person right now if we didn't have these games in English.
Yeah, man, and it just saddens me because there's so much more that could have been. I mean, not only this, but both the Lunar games. I mean, had like Grandia. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of RPGs, and that's not. And like Rent a Hero. I can't even name all these things. There's so many.
Yeah, in Japan, there are so many RPGs, dating sims, strategy games. There are so many, you know, of those franchises that were just left, you know, completely. I mean, Working Designs was a small company, man. They couldn't bring out everything. They brought out what they could, and everything else stayed locked in Japan.
That's a sadness. Wow.
Alright, Pat, so I'm watching you fight here. Can you give us a little update on where you're headed?
I'm going to a place called the Burning Village, and you'll see why it's called that in just a second. Apparently this is where I have to go, so I'm just following the trek like in a Link to the Past. I'm fighting these little demon things that are kicking my ass, like these molten lava demons. I think that actually this is the Burning Village. You'll see why it's called that in a sec.
Alright.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys are watching. This is pretty much why it's called the Burning Village. Mostly because of the obvious. And the citizens are kind of weird, they're not running away.
Oh wow, yep, you're right about that, it sure is on fire.
Quite literally a village that's burning.
Everyone's just hanging out though.
Yeah, I don't know, they just don't care, it's like, oh, whatever.
You know, the fire really doesn't look too, you know, threatening here. It's just kind of like wavy.
Yeah, it's kind of stationary.
You just gotta cut some slack, Mel.
Hey, but those are some nice transparencies that the Saturn supposedly can't do.
Yeah, it's yeah. Apparently, actually, somebody actually corrected us in the comments when we talked about that in the cast. Apparently, it can do transparencies, but I guess it's just not straightforward to do it. Like, it's just not an easy process.
Yeah, if I understand the hardware correctly, what it is the second VDP that was added to the Saturn late in its development. Sega actually put a hardware transparency in that chip. It's not a traditional transparency because of the way the Saturn, you know, draws everything with VDP1, and then of course VDP2 is there sort of as a supporting chip. So most developers didn't know how to get the transparency from VDP2 to work with what was being drawn on the screen with VDP1. mean, it kind of, you know, a lot of developers didn't even try. They just meshed everything.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like lazy programming to me. I mean, why go through all the trouble to do this when you can just easily press one button and it'll work, you know? Or
It was more, I think it was more to do with the polygons. You know, I mean, getting the transparency over VDP1, actually drawing the polygons is where most of the problems occurred.
Right.
I gotcha.
There-
Well, we did see some true transparency in games like Burning Rangers, didn't we?
You would see developers, and especially within Sega, they would figure out how to combine the two to, you know, get beautiful transparencies. I mean, especially later on in the system's life, man, you would see it. You would see 2D transparencies, you know, all over the place in shooters, platformers. KO Flying Squadron has some of the best transparencies on the system.
You're talking about 2, right?
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah, and that's definitely a game I'd like to touch. I'd like to play for streams eventually. KO2, as the first one, is probably one of my favorite games on the Sega CD. I mean, sorry, Lunar Games, but you don't have anime flying bunny girls. Just the way it is. But
Hey,
yeah,
so is anyone else excited about that Lunar fan translation that's
Wait.
being worked on?
wait, there's a Lunar fans translation being worked on?
There sure is for Silver Star Story Complete.
Oh, wow.
Somebody I think has made quite a bit of progress. I can't remember which forum I saw it on, but yeah, that's being worked on, I think, as we speak.
That's awesome. I'm excited for any game that gets translated that I could play. I mean, I love. Actually, it's kind of funny though, because I actually just picked up a Lunar Eternal Complete on the PlayStation 1.
Oh yeah, I did see that photo that you had posted. That's
Yeah.
nice.
So it's gonna be cool. I'd love to play some of these games on the Saturn and like sort of talk about them some more. So I just love like any game I can just play. You know, I mean, as long as it's translated, and I know what's going on. I'll pop it in and play it.
Me too, and I'm especially excited because with the MPEG card, the Saturn version of Silver Star Story is actually superior to the PlayStation version.
Wow,
So
that's
I
insane.
think that's pretty cool that we're gonna have something on the Saturn that kind of beats out the competition and be able to finally experience that.
I'm extremely excited to play that game. I'm just over the moon that people were able to translate these things. I mean, I know it's a lot of hard work and stuff, but it's definitely shows that it's worth it at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Are you gonna give it a shot, Mel?
Definitely, man. That's actually one of the sore spots of, you know, being there with the Saturn in Japan, because, you know, when the Lunar series hit Japan, I thought for sure that it was going to come out in the US because the Sega CD versions had come out, right?
Well, I mean, you weren't wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I really did think that they were going to come out in the US, and when they didn't, it was like, what? You know, why in the world isn't this coming out? And then to make matters worse, you know, like Grandia, it ended up coming out for the damn PlayStation.
That must have been
You know, so-
just a real burn to you. It's like, ugh.
Well, you know, it was kind of one of those things where everybody's talking up the PlayStation at the time. You know, oh, the PlayStation has this game, and oh, the PlayStation had that game. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, well, yeah, the Saturn had this game in Japan, but, you know, you can't say that because nobody can play the Japanese version. Well, nobody in the West can play it hardly.
Yeah, man. That really burns. But I'm just glad we live in a day and age now where that's not a thing anymore. I mean, even the weirdest, most obscure games are getting U.S. English releases. I mean, I see like these dating sims. Like, I mean, hell, even Galgun 2 got a physical Switch release. Can you believe that? A physical
Yes.
Switch release. That's insane. Like, they wouldn't even touch that in the U.S. They'd be like, you know what? Get that stupid weeb stuff out of my face.
Yeah, they really do. You're so right there. And I think we have studios like Working Designs to thank for that, because they really paved the way for all these localizations that we get today.
It's fantastic. I'm over the moon excited that we've got to a point where we can actually play these games and enjoy them. It's great.
Yeah, speaking of those kinds of games that I would love to see someone finish a fan translation would be Princess Crown. That's a game that I, trudged through to finish the Japanese version. And while that one wasn't too particularly difficult, I would love to see an English version of it so I can know what was going on.
Definitely. I actually never played the game, unfortunately enough. What exactly is it about?
Oh, it's kind of a hybrid, RPG, platformer, side-scroller style game. I mean, it's really weird. It's a really weird kind of game. If I'm not mistaken, it was done by Vanillaware, I think, or the guys that formed Vanillaware. It has this great art style. It's got, these huge sprites on screen that are animated so good, and it's just so weird to see a side-scrolling RPG, and it's just a really cool game, And again, it was one of those games where you were just really hoping was going to make it out over here, and it just never did.
That's always a sadness.
Yeah.
And the bummer thing is that, a lot of the companies that did these probably don't even exist anymore, so they can't even release like an HD remaster or anything of that nature. Which really bums me out as well. Anyways, one of the things I'd like to talk with you guys about is that I think everyone's gonna rip our heads off about is the announcement of Shenmue HD 1 and 2.
Wow, yeah, that was big news. I was surprised to see that.
I was not expecting that in the slightest. What about you, Mel?
Yeah, that was one of those things that when they announced Shenmue 3, I was sort of thinking to myself, I was like, when was out and really relevant? It's been 20 years almost since that game was out, and I don't know, it was kind of like, what are they going to do to correlate Shenmue 3 these gamers? And I figured they would have to do something. Now, putting them both into a release for, all the systems, that was a shocker. I really didn't expect that. I was thinking maybe separate digital releases at best.
Yeah, man. Okay, before I continue, I just want to show that this thing. Like I said before, that this is really weird that they put stuff like this in the game. We're just calling her a skank. Like, what the hell? We're not meant for kids. But anyways, to get back to you guys, yeah, I was really shocked. I wasn't shocked that it was happening. I kind of expected it, but I'm just surprised that they would do it in terms of not working with, was it Yu Suzuki's new studio, Yisonet or whatever, and sort of working with them. Because they don't really have any benefit to releasing them to hype up 3, as they're not making money for it. But maybe their delay is just trying to get everything working, because it's a lot of copyright issues that I've heard, because they have like soda machines that are branded and things of that nature.
Absolutely, that product placement would be a huge thing to contend with these days. There'd be a lot of legal stuff that would have to be kind of worked out before they could just release things with anything of that nature in.
Yeah, but I'm just glad that we're actually finally getting these games. It's wonderful.
Definitely. I'm just really excited for new fans to be able to experience Shenmue. I know a lot of my friends have taken interest in the game, but they either just don't have a Dreamcast, or they're not too sure about how the gameplay would translate into 2018. So I'm just really excited that people are going to be able to play these games on modern consoles.
Yeah, and I made the same post on my Facebook page earlier that I was just saying, now I'm happy my friends don't have to spend like $150 like I did to get all these games on the Dreamcast. And one of the guys in the chat saying that he was so hyped. Chris Red was saying he's so hyped he cried. I can't deny you, like that theme always gets to me. The opening thing of Shenmue. Like, I don't know why, it always like hits me in the it just gives me a nostalgic feeling. I don't know about you guys though.
Oh, for sure. It's that music that always gets me.
Yeah, man, I loved it so much. I got it oh, on vinyl as well. And speaking of that, they're actually doing a repress of it on vinyl.
Oh,
So-
nice. Now, was that Data Discs who put that one out?
Yes, there's Datadisc that put that version of it out, and I'm really excited to see it come out. I mean, it's just a really fantastic sounding soundtrack, greatly mastered. It's probably one of their finest, in my opinion.
That's very cool.
I'm getting my ass kicked by this thing.
I see Chase in the comments is saying that he still thinks that Panzer Dragoon Saga might have a good chance of getting a remake. He says that's his biggest dream. Me too, Chase. Me too.
I agree. Okay, it looks like I'm gonna have to tank this with Fu, so hopefully I can do this, but it's gonna be a challenge. Oh, no, I died. Hopefully I don't have to reset this entire dungeon. But yeah, I'm really the only thing with the remake though is it's gonna be a lot harder because it's actually Sega having to do the entire game from scratch, which is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how likely my hope of that is. Like, I don't know how realistic it is, I guess I should say. But as a diehard PDS fan, I guess I'm never really gonna give up on it.
Exactly, and you know, never say never. I mean, with the way the popularity of these games are going, I mean, I can definitely see it having some sort of future of some sort. It just really saddens me sometimes. It's like these games that, you know, are super good or just like don't get the time of day because it just was the wrong place at the wrong time, you know?
Definitely. I mean, I think that we have some good signs that way. We have a little bit of a resurgence of interest in Panzer Dragoon with the 20th anniversary album that just came out. And then also, Panzer Dragoon Orta for the Xbox was just recently made backwards compatible with the Xbox One earlier in the week. So I've seen a lot of people trying out Orta for the first time on their Xbox. So, you know, I guess maybe if Sega sees that there is interest in this old series, maybe we can hope for something to happen. I don't know what that something may be, but anything would be better than nothing at this point.
Exactly. Maybe they're just sort of testing the waters, seeing, you know, maybe it's you know, there's an audience for this type of game. I mean, I'd love to hope one day that we get that audience. It get to the Shenmue level, but even with Shenmue, it's like it just you know, that popularity and that Kickstarter thing. So I think if maybe something similar happens with Panzer Dragoon, where it's like maybe a new Saga game comes out, that there will be, you know, the benefit to releasing it and benefit to doing a remake of it. But until then, it's like really nil to none right now, especially with Sega's play it safe strategy in terms of gaming, where it's like, okay, well, if it's not a Sonic game, then, you know, it doesn't matter, which kind of bums me out. I mean, yeah, they do have studios like Atlas putting these games out, but it's not really, I mean, they don't really own they really just own Atlas. I mean, well, they don't own it, they just publish for it. At least to my understanding. Wow, I'm getting my butt kicked right now.
Well, you know, I think
yeah.
We'll have to realize that, you know, with the way Sega's running their business nowadays, you have to support any kind of retro game. I mean, guys, you have to support the Sega Genesis collection when it comes out. You have to support Shenmue 1 and 2 when it comes out. Yeah, you know, you have to support these games because these are the numbers that Sega's going to... in Orta being put onto the Xbox One store. What is it? I think it's $10 or something. Even that is going to be figured into the bottom line when they decide what they want to do. You know, they're going to look at the numbers. Oh, a couple 100,000 people bought Panzer Dragoon Orta. Maybe we should do something with Panzer Dragoon Saga. You know, that's how it works in business. Interest determines, you know, how companies approach, you know, making content, because they're going to say, hey, the demand is there, let's go ahead and give it a try. And even if it's as something as simple as an emulation release for Panzer Dragoon Saga that is widescreen and HD, I would take that. You know, that would at least be something. You know, right now we're getting not a lot for the Saturn from Sega. So, I mean, you gotta support these retro releases, man. It's the only way Sega knows that anybody has any interest in any of this old stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, the same thing with this Anime Watch Case Closed. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah, we wanted to do more seasons, but the popularity wasn't there, and it wasn't worth it in the end, which really bums me out. But I mean, it's just the way it is. It's all bottom line. It's all business, no matter how much fun and passion there is. I mean, you gotta, at the end of the day, you gotta do what's right for your company and what's right for, you know, what's right for yourself, I guess, and what's gonna keep food on the table.
Yeah, when it comes right down to it, a lot of these companies, you know, most of them are risk adverse. You know, they do not want to take the risk of making a multi-million-dollar game and having it fail, because you have to know, man, that in the video game realm, a failure of a big, you know, title that took a lot of money to make has closed down many a studio.
Come on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Mel. And I mean, if we even go back and look at Panzer Dragoon Saga's original release, wasn't it the game that had the highest budget at the time? Like, they just poured money into it, and unfortunately, I mean, I guess we could probably label Panzer Dragoon Saga as a business failure, because it came at the end of the Saturn's lifetime. There weren't many copies sold, there weren't many copies produced. So, you know, to have a massive undertaking like PDS just not go real well, I can't imagine what that might have been like at the time for Team Andromeda and Sega.
Yeah, when it really comes down to it, the last handful of games released by Sega, you know, in the US, stuff like Panzer Dragoon Saga, Burning Rangers, House of the Dead, the only reason that we got those games was because of the big budget of some of those games. I mean, Sega put a lot of money into making Panzer Dragoon Saga, put a lot of money into making Burning Rangers. Those games were in development for multiple years, and Sega needed a return on them. So that's the only reason we got those games in the West. You know, Sega had abandoned Saturn by the time most of those games were coming out. I mean, everybody knew that the Saturn was done in '98 when Panzer Dragoon Saga launched. That was just them trying to recoup some investment. We're lucky we even got it.
Absolutely. I always wonder what it might have been like if a game like Panzer Dragoon Saga would have come out on a console that was supported, or if, you know, the Saturn had been supported further into the late 90s. I always wonder, you know, if the popularity of it might be up there with Final Fantasy VII and things like that had massive marketing backing and everything. I always wonder what could have been for the Panzer Dragoon series, because, I mean, we did get Orta on the Xbox, but it wasn't really that hyped or anything like that. And then things kind of just fell off from there. So I always wonder what could have been with that series.
Yeah, a lot of the trouble with Sega's original Xbox releases, stuff like Otage, stuff like Panzer Dragoon Orta, I mean, even, you know, other things like Spike Out, was, of course, nobody bought the Saturn in the West, so nobody knew the heritage, you know, of these games. Nobody knew how awesome, you know, the original Panzer Dragoon series was, because so few in the West bought the Saturn. Nobody cared about Panzer Dragoon Orta. So, you know, it was sort of like Sega's failure with Saturn rolled over straight to Dreamcast, rolled straight over to their releases on the Xbox. Just nobody knew how good these titles were because of the failure of the Saturn.
Yeah, apologies for being so silent. This is getting really annoying to beat these guys.
Tough battle.
Exactly, I'm trying to get them down, but yeah, I mean, it just really, I mean, as much as it disappoints me that we're not going to see these games, I think eventually we will. It's just a matter of time, you know, and just, you know, laws. It's one of the big ones.
I think a lot of what's going to change for Sega is going to be development environment is getting so much easier. You know, these consoles that are coming out now, they're so much easier to program for. There's so much software that does half the work for you, and as it gets easier to develop for, as these engines, you know, these pre-made engines and pre-made systems and hold for everything, and it becomes cheaper and cheaper, and digital releases, I think Sega will begin to tap into its older library of stuff. It's, you know, it just takes time for them to realize the demand is there, you know, that's going to not be cost prohibitive to them.
Oh man, this boss is friggin' tough. Oh my gosh, there's fire all over the place. I can't put it out. It's like Pac-Manning me over here.
I see that. Have you ever played this battle before, Pat?
Absolutely not, no. And
Oh,
die
no.
again. Yep. I think our reader's getting pissed off I keep dying. You just keep having a mass exodus trying to get out of here. I'm trying to do this boss. I messed up last time because I accidentally, instead of doing my heal, I did my wind on it, and I kind of wasted all my healing abilities. So that was not smart of me to do. But one of the things I also want to see is how your guys anime. I mean, that kind of a big thing is what you guys animes. What are you guys doing anime wise? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been recently watching High School, the anime that has the Saturn as a girl, the Dreamcast as a girl, and the Mega Drive as a girl, and their little adventures and what goes on. I just started watching it.
Oh, SEGA Hard Girls, right?
Yeah, Sega Hard Girls, and it is such a weird piece of media, man, and it's got so many little, like, you know, nods to stuff that come out for Sega systems and their arcade stuff, and each girl, you know, Dreamcast, Mega Drive, and Saturn all have their own little personalities. It's such a weird, you know, show, but I just started watching it, and it's actually got my attention. I plan on watching the whole series that I have now.
Yeah, I absolutely love that one, Mel. I watched it for the first time. I think it was near around the time that it was released, and then I went back to it. Oh, it must have been last summer. I went through the whole thing again, and I just enjoy it so much. It combines my two favorite things, which are, you know, high school anime and the Sega Saturn. I absolutely love Saturn. I have a little figure of her that was gifted to me by one of my friends in the community. I have her sitting on my dresser, so I'm definitely a big fan of the Sega Hard Girls.
Yeah, I always like to watch that. I just never got the time to, but I heard it's really, really good.
Yeah, it's so worth it, and the episodes are pretty short, so you can down a couple of them in just a few minutes of your time.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm definitely have to check that out.
So how about you, Pat? What has your anime schedule been like?
It's been pretty good. I started watching Yu Yu Hakusho, so that was pretty good. I had an announcement. I'm actually having a podcast with a couple of guys about Yu Yu Hakusho, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be great. We'll be discussing Japanese culture, and we'll be discussing Yu Yu Hakusho itself. It's going to be brilliant, and I'm really excited to see where it goes, and that should be coming out maybe towards the end of May. So right now I'm just watching some Yu Yu Hakusho right now, trying to get caught up, because it's the first time I'm actually playing it. I've never played it, first time watching it. I've never watched it before. So I don't know. So it's all brand new to me, and the first arc was okay. The Revive arc I watched through, and it was kind of weird. Not gonna lie. So it definitely was really slow compared to what I expected, because I mean, it's just really funny because like I'm watching the intro of it, and it's like, who are all these characters? Because the first 5 episodes don't have any of these characters. They don't introduce like until episode 5 or 6. So it's like I'm watching all these people are jumping out, all these different characters, and like he's alive. It's like, what's going on? And it just really confuses me. I don't know if maybe you guys run into stuff like that.
Yeah, I've never seen Yu Yu Hakusho personally. So this is your first time watching it. What made you want to do a podcast about it?
It wasn't my idea. It was my friend's idea. He was like, "Yeah, I just want to do a podcast about Yu Yu Hakusho. Anyone want to join us?" So I did, and I really enjoyed it. I've started to really enjoy it. Oh, finally, I beat this damn boss.
Yay!
I just really enjoyed. I've been really interested in watching it, but I just never had a chance to. I don't know. Just when I was younger, I never watched it, so I just have a reason to really watch it. But now that I'm watching, I'm really enjoying it, and really miss that I didn't watch it back in the day. Also, I don't know what that's about. She like just did this magical twirl and transformed or something. That was weird.
Yeah, well, what a fun way to kind of get into something new, Pat. I mean, it's always great to experience anime with friends. I know that I really enjoy watching with some of my girlfriends, and we have a good old time. So even though you didn't get to experience it back in the day, maybe seeing it for the first time in 2018 and being able to talk about it with your friends, I mean, that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and that's really what I enjoyed about it. I'm coming in with a fresh mind while they all have watched it before and experienced it in the past. But now I can come in fresh and be like, okay, well, this is what I think about it in a 2018 mindset. And right now I'm doing both the dub and the subs just so I can get both of those experiences and compare and contrast. But I guess right now, for a little spoiler, I really think the dub is not that great compared to the sub. But it's not badly done, it's just kind of weird.
Okay, and you usually prefer subs, don't you?
It depends on the anime. Like, I'll watch Case Closed as much as I can in dub, because I like the dubbing on that. Name changes, not really, but the dub is well done. Evangelion, I love the dub. It's one of my favorite dubs. Things of that nature. So it just really all depends on how I feel and what I want to check out. Same with DBZ. I prefer the dub of that one as well, but some of them, like, later case Detective Conan, where I can't watch it, or all these later games that I need to watch it with subs, I'll just do it.
I got ya.
Oh, she gave me a red rainbow amulet. But her little boy's saved. And the town is done burning down, even though everyone lost their homes. But yeah, I have to say that's probably the weirdest dungeon that I've done. I kind of want to keep going, though. I don't know if you guys are gonna be busy, but this is a lot of fun. I actually had a lot of fun, even though I was getting my ass kicked. I'm gonna give.
Yeah, I can stay around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, we'll see, cause man, that actually, to be honest with you guys, I kind of wing that one. I haven't really gotten this far before, so it's like I didn't really know what to expect or how to do it. But I'm just glad I got through that. I was really, really happy, even though I had to redo the boss 3 or 4 times. But I think pretty much we're at the end game. Or would you say that we're pretty close towards the end, Mel?
Down on it, yeah. You're not too far from the end.
Sweet, yeah. I mean, we're definitely not going to be playing the entire game to completion. But, today. But I definitely can see maybe next or the one afterwards. But one of the things I'd like to know is what do you guys want us to play that's anime inspired? One of the biggest ones I was thinking of is Police Knots, as it's really anime-esque inspired, and it's one of my favorite games on the Saturn. I know I said it a lot. I have a lot of favorite games on the Saturn, so it's kind of hard, but there's quite a lot. I know Dragon Force 1 and 2. Yeah.
Have you ever played Dragon Force before, Pat?
I've never touched it once in my life. Wait, didn't we just save that boy?
Yeah, you have to do the Dragon Force games then at some point.
I do want to. It's definitely on the list. I'm just sort of unsure what I should go do next, as there's just so much and so many good titles. I kind of do want to do Police Knots though, especially with the Hideo's announcement being incoming soon with his Death Stranding game.
I think Police Knots is a great choice. That is an awesome game, and I was so happy when, you know, the Saturn version was, or the Saturn English version was complete. I mean, that was a long time coming.
Yeah, man, I'm a huge Hideo Kojima fan. I'm actually hoping to maybe see some of the new game at E3 this year. So I'm really excited to go, and hopefully I'll be able to experience, you know, Death Stranding, and maybe, even if I'm lucky, maybe meet him and just thank him for all the, you know, all the games. I mean, Snatcher, Police Knots, Metal Gear. I mean, I know it's kind of hipstery to say that I think Snatcher's my favorite Hideo. Well, Snatcher and Police Knots my favorite Hideo Kojima game, but I mean, it's just a fact that I think I really enjoy those games, and I love the atmosphere that it created. And it's sort of a self-enclosed story where it's like you don't have to have some convoluted, weird story for it, you know?
Oh yeah, Snatcher was one of the, you know, that was one of those early games that you rolled into on the Sega CD, and it was actually almost like it was made for someone that wasn't a kid. You know, every game back in those days, even the role-playing games on consoles, they felt like they were still made with kids in mind. And Snatcher was one of those early games, man, that just, it sort of gripped you like, hey, games are growing up. Games are starting to be more serious. Even though the content was still fantastical, you know, it was still very, you know, it was adult-like. It was like the game was treating you like you were actually older and could take some serious, you know, content.
Exactly. I mean, even when Snatcher didn't pull punches, I mean, like, heal. I mean, they had so much violent content. I mean, the murder of, like, I don't want to spoil it, but the murder of, like, certain people. I mean, the murder of these Snatchers, the way they just die, they just get blasted away. And yeah, they're robots, but it's still pretty gory, and especially with one of the. Have you beat a Snatcher before, Mel?
Yes.
Especially with one of the pets in the game was pretty shocking to me when I played it.
Suck, man, and it was like no way to avoid it either.
Yeah, I mean, but that game is just really fantastic, and I definitely hope that anybody that has a Sega CD or just has the ability to play it does. And it's one of those games, unfortunately, has that high price tag to it, which kind of bums me out.
It really has no choice but to have the high price tag. I mean, not only is the game, you know, on the rare side, but I mean, heck, to my knowledge, there was no other English translation for it, was there?
No, I mean, it was never released on a virtual console of any sort. I mean, that just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like the Sega CD is the only official, you know, release of the game you can actually get.
And funny enough, it actually was released on Saturn as well.
That's another fan translation that needs to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree 100%. It's definitely in the works, I've heard, but I've never. But a lot of the stuff is through the grapevine, so it's like nobody really knows for sure. But I would love to play that version, as I think the music is a lot more interesting, and they have some more content. But to be honest, I do love the synthy Mega Drive sound of that OST, though. And the voice acting is really good as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially for a game of that time.
Yeah, it's just... How the hell am I supposed to get through this? What the hell? A really, really enjoyable game. And I mean, I'm going to be controversial right now, but I think it's definitely worth the high price tag if you want to get it. Like, I think it's... If I paid $500 for it, to be honest, and I do want to pay $500 for it, I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep over it, in all honesty.
Yeah, everybody has those items where, I mean, it's not just it's not just a product of it being a trophy or a prize. It's actually I have an emotional investment in it. I like it. I think it's one of the best things ever made, and it's collectible on top of it. That makes that makes it okay for it to be worth what it's worth.
Exactly. And to be honest though, I think I'm not much of a collector guy, but I think, if I really enjoy the game, I'd want to get it. That's really the only staple of when I pay lots of money for a game. Is that it's
right,
just
Pat.
worth
I'm
it to
just
me.
like you in that respect.
I
I'm not much of a collector either, but of course my Panzer stuff, that can get pretty pricey, but it's the sentimental value that you attach to it, so I wouldn't blame you at all for wanting to pay $500 for Snatcher.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, eventually I'd like to buy a Magic Knight Rayearth as well once I finish it up. I think it'd be a really good game to have in that collection, even if, I beat it before. But, it is what it is. Is there any other games that you guys really just want to get, that you're really attached to, that you think it's worth it?
Well, I'm actually lucky enough to where most of the Saturn games that I want, I already have. My Saturn collection is fairly large, but there still is a Saturn game that I do not have that I really want, and that's Cotton Boomerang.
Oh man, that game is fantastic.
It is, and I own Cotton 2. I've had Cotton 2 for a long time, and believe it or not, years and years ago, I bought Cotton 2. I thought to myself, hey, Cotton 2, Cotton Boomerang, they're so much alike. I'll just stop here and be happy. But God, was that such a stupid thing to do, because then the price shot up of Cotton Boomerang, really taking away the option of getting it from me for a while. But now I'm at the point where it's just like, man, I like that game so much, I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and pick it up.
Yeah, I feel the same way about I feel the exact same way about Cotton. I love Cotton to death, but it's just so expensive. It's like I don't think it's really. I don't know if I can justify getting it for that much money, especially when it's just a shoot 'em up. Where, it doesn't have that replayability values of like RPGs of that nature. Yeah, it has a lot of replayability, but I kind of have a thing with shooters where I kind of move on once in a while. But man, I do love that Cotton series.
Yeah, it was one of those. Those two games were, they were originally done on the Saturn's arcade Titan hardware. So, they're games that were born and bred, or that particular part of the series was born and bred on the Saturn, and it's such a part of the Saturn shoot 'em up library that the fact that I don't own Cotton Boomerang has actually started to bother me over the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to pull the trigger and just pick it up.
Yeah, man. I really love that. I really wish I would have got these games back then when it wasn't that expensive. But nowadays, there's a lot of good options to play them that I'm blessed of that. But man, would it be cool to own Cotton 2 Boomerang? Would it be cool to own Radiant Silver Gun? Batsu Gun? But it's like, you have to think to yourself, is it really worth that investment? And I guess going back to it, it's like, well, do you really love it? Is the bigger question you have to ask yourself. And in your case, Cotton Boomerang is that love, and in my case for Snatcher, that is that love. But compared to the rest of them, it's like I don't know.
How it works, Pat. It comes down to, hey, how much do you care about this game or this series or whatever it is? How much does it mean to you? Did you get it for your birthday when you were a kid? Did you have it as your only game for a system for the longest time when you were a kid? It's something about it that's going to be personal that makes these high-priced games worth it to you. A lot of people will say, well, how can you pay that much for a game? And there's, to the people that buy these games at this price, most of the time there's a personal story to it, and that's pretty much how it works, man.
Right. And another big question is, will you get enjoyment out of just owning it? Like, you know, just being able to see it sitting on your collection shelf. Is that something that will really bring you satisfaction? And I think if you have that personal story behind it, I know for me anyway, that's definitely the case, because in reality, we can only spend so much time playing a game. So, you know, are you going to enjoy that game when you're not playing it? Are you going to enjoy owning it?
Yeah, I mean, and especially with stuff like a lot of stuff like the Raya. I mean, it just makes it easier to play these games and not have to spend that money anymore. But I mean, there's just something that you know pulls at me, like that says, like, you know, would it be worth it? You know?
Well, you know, with the different options that have been popping up for the Saturn, the Raya, the pseudo Saturn cartridges, the mod chips, the different ways that you can play Saturn games these days. You know, 10 years ago, I was very much against them. And I would tell you, you know, don't do that. That's not what you want to do. You know, you want to experience it pure. You want to be legitimate. You know, I would argue that emulation was crap. But as the years went on, man, it just came down to, why are you trying to take somebody's experience away? If more people can experience these great old games, that's a good thing, man. That's better that people can appreciate this stuff and, you know, have access to it. It shouldn't be governed by the super rich or the collectors. It shouldn't be governed by eBay prices. Art should never be hidden behind a closed door of money, you know, and that happens a lot in collecting nowadays, and that should never be the case. And when the doors opened up to Saturn owners and potential Saturn owners with all these different ways, I think, in my opinion, that was when the interest in the Saturn exploded a couple years ago. People finally realized, hey, this system has some good games, because the only people that knew it before were the people that had it as a kid, or the people that were keeping the games behind lock and key of really high eBay prices.
Yeah, man, and we get back to I go back to this a lot, but I mean, it all comes down to the whole preservation thing. I mean, we're not anywhere close to where movies are, where we can just, you know, go get a publicly distributed film of, you know, these black and white movies. Or there's so many releases. I mean, the games are just shafted at that point. We don't have that ability to play these fantastical games or play these old games without paying the piper to play them. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time that we have this technology that's still active, that we can still preserve it. I mean, but we still have that legal boundary that's stopping us from, you know, playing these games. And I mean, yeah, movies are one thing, but I mean, games like this, it's just, there's no exceptions. It's like, oh, well, you know, you don't own the disc or you don't own this, then it's piracy, and, you know, there's no exceptions. And people try to get these exceptions, but we just get shot down by these courts and congresses that, you know, are afraid that we're going to lose money. But it's like, that's not the point. We just want to play these games, but we can't because of these crazy rules. And I know that, you know, a lot of this stuff is just not paid attention to, and so it takes the blind eye, but I mean, it's still the fact that it is illegal. If, you know, SEGA or anybody that owns these wanted to sue your ass, they can. And sue you good, they will. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's just ridiculous that we have to live like that. Yeah, I mean, I know that's sort of, we're getting into really big rant territory, but I mean, that's just really how I feel about it. It just really annoys me that we constantly keep going back to this whole thing, and it's like nothing's getting solved.
It's and the thing is that makes the conversation hard is that people feel passionately about it both ways. You know, you have people that, from a preservation perspective, you have people who see it from a, hey, this company hasn't done anything with this IP for 20 or 30 years, you know, why should they be able to keep, you know, gamers from playing it, nowadays, and then you have those who, they circumvent, the security of a system to play games from, 20 years ago, and they don't think that that should be illegal when the company has given you no way to play the game otherwise. And there's a counter argument to it all. Everybody looks at it their way. And I mean, I think that's the reason why nothing ever really gets done, man, because, I mean, you have so many people that feel so passionately so many ways, it becomes such a convoluted argument in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I have people that argue with me about, like they want to play these games that's like, oh, well, you can just do this, get this mod. Like, no, it's piracy, it's illegal, it's bad, it's awful. It's like, well, you're never going to play this game ever again if that's the case, unless you want to spend $300 on it. I mean, and you can do that, that's fine, but I mean, it's going to come to a point where how many thousands of dollars to play all the games you want do you spend to a point where it's like, it's not even worth it anymore. And then you're out that money. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's not like a car where it's like, yeah, well, I want to drive, a R32 or something, but I can't, or I want to get this rare item. I mean, it's different because, it's, I mean, there's not a story, there's not like a story or thing behind it. I mean, even books, I mean, it's the same thing where it's a lot easier. But
a lot of it, man, I think, for me, it comes down to the original companies don't get any of the money from these sales anyway from today. I mean, if you buy a Sega Saturn game that's really expensive, say something like a Hyper Duel or something like that, I mean, your money is going to eBay, PayPal, and your money is going to the eBay seller in various different percentages. And nobody else is seeing any money from that. None of the original team is seeing a dollar from that. So how is the answer to, you should buy a legitimate copy? I mean, how is that any different from pirating it? I mean, you still have not given a single penny to the original publisher, the original developer. Nobody is seeing that money that originally had anything to do with that game. So really, when you come down to it, I mean, you can add a bunch of semantics to it all you want. In the end, nobody from the original work is getting any money. So what does it matter how you play it?
I don't know. It's just that mentality. One of the solutions that I actually had that I thought was a pretty cool idea is why not offer to sell ISOs? I mean, $5, $10, $15 a pop. I mean, to play these games legitimately, and give them like a tool to burn it. I mean, I think that would be really beneficial. Like maybe just like a DRM based thing where it's like you have a login password, put disk in, burn the game, and that's it. I think that would be fantastical and would solve all the issues where the money does go to the publishers, and all you have to do is buy for the $5 or like I can't tell you how much money I would pay for that. Like I would buy these games again just to support them because they're getting the money. They got that audience, they got that, okay, maybe somebody wants to play it. I mean, you know how cool that would be. It'd just be insane, and that just kind of drives me up the wall that companies don't take these risks because they're worried about it or they think that they're not going to make the money.
Yeah, I was actually hoping that that's what Sega Forever would ultimately become. I mean, I was kind of hoping that Sega would be like, hey, this service is going to mature. We are going to start giving you options to get these games, outside of having to buy the originals. And I still am hopeful that Sega comes to that conclusion. Hell, I'm hoping all of these companies come to that conclusion eventually, where there's a universal emulation system, software, that is available, that has a digital store to it, and allows you to play all of these games. And there have been some online services that have attempted to give you access to these old games, but it really needs to be controlled by, the companies that actually hold these IPs so that more games can actually get out instead of one company trying to put together a whole pile of IPs. And a service like Sega Forever could mature into that and just give you the option of buying a ROM to an old game and playing it on there. And I think that would be a great option.
Yeah, man. It's just time will tell. Maybe one day they might do that, but I mean, until then, it's like we're kind of boned, essentially. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it. I'm a bit lost, so I think I'm gonna regroup, and we'll come back next week and hopefully finish this off because we made quite a bit of progress. We knocked down 2 bosses. We got through 2 dungeons, so I think we accomplished a lot. So from everybody here at SEGA Saturn SHIRO, I'd like to thank, of course, our wonderful guest Mel, or SEGA Lord X, as you guys know him, and Claire for stopping by. Do you guys have anything to plug or say before we head out?
Plug the coming content to my YouTube channel, which will drop tonight, around midnight tonight, so it's technically going to be Sunday, the 15th, but I'm going to be dropping definitely 1 video, possibly 2 videos to start out the resurgence of my content. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
What about you, Claire?
Definitely. I think Mel said it all. I'm going to be checking out his content tonight, and everybody else should too.
Yep, same. So I guess from everybody from SEGA Saturn SHIRO, have a great night, and you must play SEGA Saturn.